Okay, well, I think we'll start this evening and other folks will join us as we move along. I want to first of all thank you everyone for joining us this evening for Lupus Canada's first advocacy webinar. We're very excited about this. We'll be presenting a new advocacy webinar each month over the course of 2021. Today's topic will be Advocacy 101 with Thomas Simpson as our presenter. I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items before we begin. Please note all attendees are placed in listen-only mode. Video and audio have been disabled. Should you have a question for Thomas, please post it in the Q&A. We will do our best to address all your questions. This webinar will be recorded and available on our website at a later date. We also invite everybody to send us your advocacy topics to info@lupuscanada.org. We will also have this information available on our website. We hope you find this webinar informative. Thank you. And over to you, Ariana.
Thank you, Leanne. Now I'd like to introduce you all to our guest speaker tonight, Thomas Simpson. Thomas is a board member with Lupus Canada and the chair of the Advocacy Committee.
Thank you so much. I just want to make sure that folks can hear me okay. Yes, I'm seeing nods. Okay, great. Perfect. Well, hello, everyone. Oh, thank you, Heather. I'm glad you can hear me. Welcome to our first advocacy webinar today on Advocacy 101. I'm going to share my screen. I do have a presentation to help go through this webinar for the next hour. Today, we'll be learning about Advocacy 101, what is advocacy, and some tips and tricks on your own self-advocacy journeys. So if you just give me 1 second. Okay. And there we go. Can everyone see the slideshow that's now on the screen? Perfect. So for those who may not be able to see it, the slide says Lupus Canada, Life Without Borders, and a lovely logo of a butterfly. Advocacy 101, what is advocacy? Tips and tricks to becoming a successful advocate. Our overview for tonight is as follows. An introduction of myself. We'll go over what is advocacy and learn some tips and tricks. Are you an advocate? Why someone with lupus might, become an advocate and want to engage in some advocacy. And then I think the meat and potatoes of what most people are here to learn about today, what is that advocacy plan? How do you put a plan together into action? And what are the steps to become a successful advocate? We'll have a small summary and then we'll open it up to questions. I'm hoping to make this as interactive for folks as possible. So at some points, I'll ask for your feedback and thoughts. And so at that point, you can use the comment section that's in the Zoom chat to answer some of the questions. So a brief introduction about myself. I am Thomas. Hello, everyone. As Ariana said, I'm the chair of the Advocacy Committee of Lupus Canada and a board member. I'm a passionate advocate of creating a more equitable society. And when I'm not building, powerful advocacy campaigns myself, I'm probably, at home with my fiance having a nice glass of red wine. I included my favorite quote here because I do think it is, very relevant for tonight. It's a Margaret Mead quote. It reads, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." And so I think it's a great saying, especially for, folks who are new to advocacy. Don't ever think that, just because a few people think things need to be changed, it won't be. It's actually, that's usually the best way to start to make change. And then on the screen is a photo of myself with one of my favorite shirts, a Put on Purple for Lupus shirt. And this was taken, as you could probably guess, at the height of the pandemic last year, because I decided poorly to dye my hair bleach blonde. Yeah, but I think a great photo with a Put on Purple shirt. So before I get into some of the meat and potatoes, I'm going to ask you a question. What do you think advocacy is? I think a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions, have a lot of ideas of what advocacy should be or the types of people who should be involved in advocacy. But I want to know what your thought is. What is advocacy? So perhaps if you can share in the comments section. And I don't know, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. If you want to put in the chat, what is advocacy? What do you think advocacy is? And we'll give everyone a minute to kind of put your thoughts into the chat. All right, we got one from Brent saying advocacy is making change with teamwork. I love that. Anyone else?
We have in the Q&A there from Melanie, speaking up and educating others, information sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Judy says speaking up for yourself for a cause, spreading awareness, fighting for the vulnerable. Oh, I love all of this. Yes, having a voice in your own healthcare. That's great, Anita. Yes. For me, it is helping the general public understand what a disease is and how to impact the individuals who live with it. Yes, that's great. Tammy says raising awareness and sharing information and working for changes needed. Oh, this is great. I think you guys are already leaps and bounds ahead of me when I was new to this. Okay, I'm gonna go back to my PowerPoint presentation. Bear with me. You'd think after a few months working from home, I'd have this Zoom thing figured out, but still learning. All right. So there were some really great examples, different definitions. So I think it's important to know, advocacy here is not a science. You don't have to know the most influential decision makers or high-powered executives. Really, all advocacy is raising awareness of an issue or a cause to influence others to try and make a positive change. So there's two keywords here, really: influence and making positive change. Advocacy is not, and I'm going to say this over and over again because I think it's one of those misconceptions. Advocacy is just not bringing forward an issue. Okay, that's complaining. Advocacy is bringing solutions along with that issue to make that positive change. So I have a pop quiz now for everyone. Of these, I'm gonna move this. There we go. I have 3 examples here on the screen, which will go forward. And then in the comments section, I want you to let me know which one of these do you think is an example of advocacy. So example 1 is, a corporation is educating the public on the importance of having more women in leadership roles. Is this considered advocacy? Example 2, a grassroots organization is seeking changes to a government support program to change the eligibility criteria. Is this considered advocacy? Example 3, Jill is not happy with her lupus care from her doctor. She is asking for a second opinion. Is this considered advocacy? So take a second, kind of ponder that and put in the comments or in the chat section, which one of those examples do you think is advocacy? 1, 2, or 3? All right, Heather says 2, Brent says 1, Jordan says 1. And take a minute to think about it. So again, we have a corporation who's trying to have more women in leadership roles. That's example 1. Example 2 is a nonprofit trying to change government support programs for greater eligibility. That's example 2. And example 3 is about a woman with lupus who's not too happy with her health care from her doctor. She wants a second opinion. Is that it? All right, wow, 3,
Yeah.
all three. Yes. All right, this is great stuff. We got a variance of opinions. That's great. I'm gonna shock you guys, I'm sure, in 1 second. I'm gonna share my screen again. Sorry for how bumpy this is. There we go. Sorry, hold on 1 second. Come on. There we go. Well, that was not as climactic as I thought it would be, but here we are. Yes, the answer is they are all different types of advocacy. And really there's several types of advocacy. There's third-party advocacy, and that's that first example that I highlighted. It's an organization who may not be, totally impacted by an issue, but they're trying to go ahead and make a change. There's systemic issue or advocacy, and that's, really trying to go against a system to make a change. So whether that system is, government, usually to make change with policies or procedures, legislation, regulations. And then there's individual or self-advocacy, and that's where we're going to focus today. That's the advocacy that you can take as yourself to try and make a change based on your own lived experience, based on your own issues that you may come across. So are you an advocate? So now that we've kind of defined what advocacy is and the types of advocacy, do you consider yourself an advocate? I'm sure without realizing it, you're probably a good advocate already for yourself and you don't even realize. You probably are advocating for yourself every day, asking for more information, seeking accommodations, and making requests to fit your own needs. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions, as we said. So sometimes, people think advocacy is, about complaining, when really it is more of a solutions-oriented approach to fixing a problem. I think people may think, people who advocate are always angry or loud, and really that's not the case. I would strongly advise never to start your advocacy work with rooted in anger. I don't think that's ever going to be, too practical or successful for you. And I think there's this idea that, to be a successful advocate, you have to be in the know. You have to know your city councilor really well, you're a member of parliament, or you have to know, the high, the successful business executives and, golfing with them. And that's not the case. No one needs to be, a capital L lobbyist here either. A lot of the information that I'm going to share with you today is, basic information that you can find online. And the whole intent here is that your own self-advocacy shouldn't have to be that difficult. You don't have to be the most in the know. With a little bit of organization and some research, you can hopefully be successful in trying to, influence the issue that's impacting you and come up with a solution that works not only for yourself, but for others as well. So let's move on to advocacy and lupus. Oftentimes, folks who may be impacted by something like lupus need to advocate for themselves a little bit more, and that's for a number of reasons. As we know, especially when someone has a flare-up, lupus can severely affect and impact many aspects of your daily lives. While you may have a really good support network of family and friends, some of you may really have a great GP or rheumatologist, or are lucky enough to have supports from government. This may not be the case for everyone, and that can be frustrating as well, having to rely upon people in your daily lives when you really have a bad and severe flare, perhaps, or your lupus is just that bad. So what advocacy really does is try to self-empower you as much as possible. It's this idea or conviction that every person has the right to be heard, the right to be understood, and the right to decide what is an approach that works best for them to really level that playing field. All right, so why might a person with lupus need to advocate? I already touched upon it a little bit, but perhaps in the comment section, you can put your ideas, perhaps based on your own lupus, or if you're someone who's a family member, a friend of someone with lupus. Why do you think someone with lupus would need to advocate? So let's give that a minute. Let people think about that. What are some examples that you may need to advocate in your own life to make a much better positive change? All right, we have Jordan sharing experiences with others with and without lupus. That's great. Brent, to help other people with lupus. Heather says, it's difficult managing a systemic disease with a multidisciplinary medical team. Absolutely, that's really important too. Well, it's really challenging, I guess. Any other thoughts from folks? Employers and coworkers do not understand and may have trouble getting accommodations. Yeah, that's a great one, Tammy. To get changes in your own healthcare, to be able to work better with your health teams, absolutely. And we've been told by some medical professionals that our symptoms are all in our head and need to change. Well, I'm sure we could have a group therapy session for about an hour just going off of that one alone. But yeah, it's sometimes not fair when you're the one living with these symptoms and people just don't understand. But these are all great reasons why folks who do have lupus should become and feel empowered enough to become, a good self-advocate. Okay, I'm going to try and share my screen again a little bit more easily. There we go. All right. So some other things include, so as we've seen, more flexibility and support at your work, better help and attention from your doctor or your specialists, trying to get support from government programs. And this could be something like, EI or employment insurance, or CPPD, which is the Canada Pension Plan Disability. A lot of times, if your lupus is really that severe, it could, borderline being, an episodic disability as well. So there are government support programs there that could help. And if it does get that bad, provincially, sometimes there are support programs that could help you as well, like ODSP. The list goes on and on and on. But I think, folks have a good understanding of why someone with lupus should consider, advocacy as a toolkit to try and make things better for themselves. All right, the advocacy plan, the meat and potatoes, I'm sure you guys have all been waiting for. So it's always important to make sure you have a plan in place. You've got your ducks in a row. Remember, advocacy is about influencing others to make a positive change. It's not about complaining. It really is solutions oriented. So with that, we're going to go through the 6 steps of the advocacy plan. And with each of these steps, I have, 2 examples, 2 different examples of, an advocacy issue and how we could use the steps to try and, go down the rungs of this advocacy plan. And along the way, there are tips as well. So for those of you who may not be able to see the screen, I'll just go through the advocacy plan steps and then we'll go into it. So number 1 is defining the problem simply and specifically. Number 2 is about trying to find all of the solutions. Number 3 is about collecting, that information for each option. Step 4 is about considering the options and making a decision, a path forward. The penultimate step here is considering further action. And this is the one where we'll get into, who do you talk to and what is the best approach? And then number 6 really is taking action. And the first tip I have for you here is about staying organized. When you're going through your advocacy plan, you're going to come across a lot of information. Hopefully you'll be speaking to folks or connecting with people, whether that's, just bouncing ideas off of, family and friends or colleagues, or whether it's, speaking to decision makers. It's really, really important to try and take all of that information you have and to stay as organized as possible. With that in mind, let's dive into step 1, define the problem. Why are we defining our problem? We think, of course, we understand an issue. That's because we're living it. But that may not be the case for the individual or the group or the system that you're going to bring that issue up with. So often the problems or challenges that we're advocating for could be complex. They could be very multifaceted. But by trying to take away all of the complexity by making sure that your argument is easier to understand, more time can actually be used then to discuss solutions rather than explaining the problem. So what you want to do here is really try and understand your issue as much as possible. Try and make it, it's simple so that someone who has no idea what your issue is can understand it. And then you can spend more time, talking about solutions or how you can work together with other folks, with businesses, with your employer to overcome that problem. Tip 2 here is stay away from jargon and principles. Assume that the person you're speaking to has never heard of your issue before. And this is so that you're working from the same level of understanding. It's often hard when you're having a conversation with someone and they're speaking at you, assuming that you know everything that they're discussing, and you're sitting back and you're going, I have no idea what this person's saying. I'm thinking about other things now. That's not the situation you want to be in. You want to make sure that your problem is as simple as possible, so that right away, the person you're talking with, or the group you're talking with, whoever you're talking with, understands it, gets it instantly, and then you can move on to solutions. So that's step one, defining the problem. Let's take an example here. So throughout this, we're going to have two of the same examples so we can go through the steps. So the first one is, it's winter. You don't have access to a car. You use public transportation. The city you're in, unfortunately, doesn't, remove snow very well. So you can't get to the bus stop because there's just so much snow. This is something you want to advocate for. Every winter, it's the same thing over and over again. So what do? The problem could be, several things. The problem could be, it's that dang snow, it's getting worse and worse. Or it could be the bus is unreliable. It could be, that you don't have the best way of getting to work other than to the bus. So you could explain this in many different ways. But here, the best way of explaining that problem is, because the city decides not to remove snow on sidewalks, you're not able to get to the bus on time. And I think that seems very focused and simple. People will understand that. Let's take another approach. You're someone who is living with lupus. And you know what? Your lupus has been flaring very differently in the past few years. You have some periods that it's fine and very manageable. You're very happy about that. But there are some weeks where you have flares and they're getting really bad, and you're just not able to work. And you need some flex time or some flexibility with your employer to ensure that you're still able to work because you want to, but you just can't at the moment. So how would we simplify this issue? And this is where really trying to explain the symptoms that you have and understand and try to have other people understand something is very complicated as lupus, maybe difficult. But there are tools and ways of trying to do that. One of the things that I really like about Lupus Canada is how we try and define the things that people can do with lupus. And it goes something like this. You have 12 spoons. For each activity you do, you have to give up 1 spoon. So getting out of bed one day may be 1 spoon. So you have 11 spoons left in your day. And you have to brush your teeth. That's another spoon. By the time you're done your breakfast, you may not have any spoons and you feel tapped, cannot do anything. So it's about thinking around, analogies or comparisons that, you may not, you may understand the issue very well, but it's with those analogies and in comparisons, not jargon, but ways of helping people to understand something that you're going through. So let's move on to the second step. List possible solutions. So we've gotten to a point where we think we've simplified our problem as best we could. What are the solutions then? I'm just going to take a quick time check just to make sure. Okay, perfect. I want to give time for questions at the end. So just making sure that we're going through this at a good speed. So you're listing your possible solutions. It is easiest to advocate for yourself when you are armed with a bunch of solutions, and that's for a number of different reasons. But as you can see, tip number 3, the more solutions you have, the easier it's going to be to have a more timely resolution, to be more collaborative than it would be if you have one solution that you think is going to work and you're coming from a very stubborn position. What you're trying to do when you're doing your self-advocacy, you're using this advocacy plan, is come up with a bunch of different things that could work to alleviate your solution. That it may not work personally for you, but perhaps the city you live in, that's something that they'd be interested in, or perhaps that's how your employer could see this working with solutions 2 or 3. Collaborating and working together with government or organizations will produce solutions, and it does take time. It's not like everyone's issue is going to be, resolved immediately just by saying, I have 5 solutions to this issue. But it's about, building a good, positive relationship and saying, we can work together on this. And it may be frustrating at times because it doesn't feel like it's moving quick enough. But as long as you're working in a, collaborative, positive environment, eventually it should get there. Often those advocating need changes made quickly. Coming to the table with possible solutions indicates that you're ready to work now. So let's go back to our 2 examples. So you've defined your issue that the city hasn't plowed the snow on the sidewalks, so you're not able to get to your transit stop. What are some solutions that we may have here? So the one that is the most evident is the city could plow the sidewalks. That would alleviate your issue. Perhaps they could move the bus stop to something that's a bit closer to you so you don't have to trudge along in the snow. Perhaps you could try and figure out a ride, catching a ride with a colleague or a family member or a friend. Or perhaps you could try and get a taxi or an Uber. So the idea here is that you're putting together anything, any of the solutions that may overcome your issue. And then at the next step, we'll hone, get more information and then remove some of those. In the other example I gave of, needing a more flexible work environment, what are some solutions that you could bring to your employer to try and create that for yourself? Perhaps it's, urging that your organization adopt a flex time policy. Perhaps it's, trying to see if you're able to work from home with your employer. Perhaps it's using vacation or personal days or sick days. As you go through this, you'll know that some of these don't work for you. Perhaps in this instance, you have no more sick days because that's just how bad your lupus flare has been recently. So I think it's important to show to the individuals or the folks you're going to when you have an issue that you've thought of a multitude of solutions, and you can work with them. Oh, how about this? Oh, well, actually this doesn't work because of this, this, and this. And then they can go, oh yeah, okay, that doesn't work. So again, here, tip number 3, more options you have at your arsenal, the greater chance it is that you'll come up with a collaborative solution that will overcome your issue. So once we've done step 1 and 2, now we're going to collect some research. So we've come up with a list of a few solutions that we think could alleviate our issue. Now it's time to really see if those solutions are worthwhile, if they're practical. So the more that you know, the better you can advocate. So if you come up with, let's say you only came up with solutions and gave them to someone, they may have some questions. Oh, how would this work? If you're trying to get that snow removed on your sidewalk, and you're meeting with someone and they ask you, oh, well, we don't have mini plows. Where could we even get those? Or how would we even move a bus stop? As long as you have some information, and you may not know all of the information, but if you're able to start to answer people's questions, and you can start challenging some of the hesitancy or resistance to your solutions, the easier it's going to be to build that positive relationship and come up with a more collaborative approach. Because at one point, one of your solutions may work. The individuals or the groups you're chatting with may have some questions to really try and understand the solution. You may have some research to say, oh, this works in these organizations. This is their flex time policy, and this is what they've seen in terms of productivity. It hasn't changed anything. And then employer may go, oh yeah, actually that does make sense. Unfortunately, sometimes, and this is I think commonplace, sometimes governments may not see your problem as their problem, but by having information at hand, it's easier to persuade, especially those who are elected. It's a lot easier when you come with evidence-based approach. So tip number 4 here, while your problem may be close to your chest and personal, as it often is the case, your solution should be built on solid research and evidence. And you want to make that personal, emotional appeal, because your issue probably is, and that's the best way of getting buy-in from individuals. But your solutions should be built on research and evidence. So we've gone through, we've come up with some solutions. we think could work, some that we're not too thrilled about, but we've got a list of some solutions. We've come together with to look at some research to see, what are some potential questions that people ask. Now we're going to go through and decide. So you've listed your solutions, you've gathered your research, you've decided some of these aren't feasible. I don't think it should be up to me to continue to have to use my personal days or vacation days when I'm feeling ill. There should be another option. So perhaps you take that one off the table. Perhaps you don't feel that you should be taking a taxi or an Uber or Lyft to work when you have public transit that works. So perhaps you take that one off the table as well. By having several possible solutions, though, you can pick the best ones and hopefully achieve your goal. So tip 5 is it's okay to go back to the drawing board and bounce your ideas off of family or friends who don't know much about the issue, so that they can see, oh yeah, that's reasonable. The closer you are to an issue, the unfortunately more blinders you're going to have on. So the more blinders you can remove, the more you can try and take a step back, try and take the emotions out of it, the better solutions that you're actually going to have. So we've defined our issue, we've come up with some solutions, we've got some good research, we've got some good evidence as to why our solutions work. We've picked the best ones. Now what? And this is the point where folks tend to seize up and are not too sure what to do next. So I've called it consider further action. But this is where you try and figure out who's the right people to talk to and how do you go about saying it. And this is I think for folks the most difficult issue, because there are so many people you could talk to. How do you know who the right one is? There's so many different ways now of trying to even communicate with people. What is the best way to grab someone's attention? So I'm just checking the time here. Okay, the next few minutes I'll go over this. And the PowerPoint presentation here has some, I think, links that are quite useful. I'm looking at Ariana and Leanne. Hopefully we can share this with you based on your RSVP, and we can put this on the website as well so that you can have access to this. Tip number 6 I have here, remember, Lupus Canada is also here to help. So if you feel stuck and you don't know where to go, you can always come to the organization and we can try and provide guidance and advice. I think it's important to know that, as I said, self-advocacy, advocacy is all about self-empowerment. So we're not going to take your issue for you for a number of reasons, but mostly it's because you should feel as self-empowered as you can to try and go forward. We can give you some suggestions, send you to this website or connect you here. But what we want to do is make sure that you, as someone who's living with lupus, can feel empowered enough to go, this is my issue, and you know what, damn it, I'm going to get it fixed. So who is the audience you should be talking to? If it's an issue that it pertains to government, thankfully, government's becoming much more accountable and transparent. There are websites now where you can find the right people to talk to. Your elected officials have staff that, if you can't talk to the elected official, you can go and talk to their staff, and all of their information is online. People have social media now. Social media is a great way to try and, get the attention you need for your issue. If you don't know where to go, though, a quick Google search can open up a bunch of different opportunities for you. Often governments now have online directories where you can find, a chain of command. You can try and find, a director or a manager, someone who you can go to bring your issue. And it's going to take some time, but I like to think of this as, really trying to, be like a spy. How can I grab all that good information, spend some time going through a website. And these websites sometimes are not the most accessible for folks, and they won't make sense to you at first. But again, this is where, organizations like Lupus Canada or your own elected officials really can try and help you navigate that space. For an issue with a private corporation, sometimes you're not going to have as much transparency. It's not like they're going to have the same open type of directory, although sometimes they might, and that's great. Sometimes you may have to, call a generic number or a generic email, and you may get bounced around a few times, but, waiting out and hopefully, documenting everything that you've been told and every conversation you had will help you get to the best person. And I have some tips and tricks of how to get around that as well. So for considering action with government, government is big, hairy, is complex, regardless of what level, federal, municipal, provincial. I could go on and on, probably for another 20 minutes about, the divisions of power and where to go to, but I'll just do it quite quickly in about a minute. So you have the federal government, think big picture, they're there for taxes, the army, create laws for public safety, ensure that we have money and that our money is, being circulated properly. Yes, they have something called Health Canada, but Health Canada really doesn't have to do with the day-to-day interactions that, we usually need to do if we're going to a rheumatologist or to, our general practitioner. Health Canada is there for large things like, global pandemics. And they're there really to take a bunch of money and give it to the provinces so that the provinces can do the ground level stuff. So at the provincial level, they do things like, access to healthcare, access to education. And then we have the municipal level, think, local things, garbage, local pools, tennis courts, that kind of stuff. Lupus Canada actually has a pretty great guide, and there is a link here that you can go to that will explain those divisions of powers as well, so you can understand where to really go to if your issue is with the government. This is one of my favorite tools that most people do not know about. It's called the Government of Canada Electronic Directory, or GEDS for short. Google GEDS, G-E-D-S, and what you'll be able to do is search for every person who works in the federal public service. So if you have an issue with Employment and Social Development Canada, you'll be able to find all of the staff who work there to try and triage your issue. So when you have time, take 20 minutes to try and figure this out. It doesn't make sense at first, and I apologize for that. But if you go, you can try and break things down by department, and you'll soon learn the hierarchies of how government is set up. And if you're still confused, you can come back to Lupus Canada and we can try and help figure it out. Provincial governments also have the same thing. I'll just go back. So this seems, very nice, modern, whatever. Some of these provincial directories are not so modern. They don't have, emails. They'll just have a phone number or a fax number, but they still list the people's names. So, if you're out in Atlantic Canada, you can't maybe find, the person you're looking for in the health department in PEI, but you can phone them up. And you know what? Probably they'll be able to answer. So as I said, we'll share this out. There are links there for folks. Corporations may not be the same way as governments, unfortunately, but there are a lot of tools now that will enable you to try and find the right people. And LinkedIn is one of them and can become one of your best friends. So each large, well, not even large, a lot of organizations are moving to have a corporate account with LinkedIn. And I've shared here on the screen a screenshot of, one of Canada's most iconic, organizations, Tim Hortons. You're able through the people function to type, different titles, try and find people. And as long as, that individual's LinkedIn profile is connected, you'll be able to see it. You won't be able to see a hierarchy, but usually, especially with senior management, you'll be able to see who does what, get a sense, and then you can try and connect with them to try and start that conversation via LinkedIn. Perhaps you can find their email address, etc. All right, so now you've tried to find the correct person to go to. What is the approach that you want to take? What are you going to try and say to them that is simple and specific, that captures your relevant information? What is your best argument? Which of your solutions are you going to take? Should you request a meeting with an individual? Should you just send a letter? Should you get a political figure to move this forward, like your city councilor, your member of parliament? Tip 7 says, keep it simple. Again, try to explain the issue, explain why it's important and what can be done. How you go about this will depend on what you feel most comfortable with. Perhaps you've done all of this work and you think, I I can't, sit down and speak to another person. Perhaps I'll just write a letter to someone and hope that they'll call me back, which is perfectly fine. That is one way of advocating. Perhaps you're hell-bent and you want an issue fixed and you're requesting a meeting, and that's good too. The approach that you pick is really dependent on you. There's no one size fits all here, and there shouldn't be, because every issue is different. So take some time to think about what your approach is. And again, there are organizations who can help you. Lupus Canada is one of them. And we can help advise, this may be the best approach, or, instead of, sending a letter, why don't you try picking up the phone and having a call with, some staff people and see if they can move this forward. And then the final step here is take action. You've considered your steps, you've gone back and forth, you've done all the research, you've done the research to try and find out who to talk to, you've made some calls, you've taken your notes. Only thing left to do, hit send on that email, make that last call. And hopefully with these steps and with the resources available on Lupus Canada's website and with others, you're now ready to be the best self-advocate that you can be. So what did we learn? A little summary. Anyone can be an advocate when they feel empowered. Take things step by step. It may seem daunting at first, but if you take it step by step, stay organized as possible, it's actually not going to be as difficult as you think. Remember, advocacy without a solution is just a complaint, and you can only complain so far. Keep it simple as possible. The more that your audience that you're trying to talk to can understand your situation, the better. And this one is key. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to say, today is not my day. I can't continue with this today. I'll pick it up next week. It's okay to say you don't have any more spoons to give out today. That's fine. The most important thing about feeling, self-empowered on your advocacy journey is to know when to continue, when to stop, when to pause. And again, as I said, Lupus Canada is here to help. So now I'm going to open it up to questions. We have about 15 minutes. If you have any questions, you can use the Q&A function or ask in the chat. If you have any questions you don't feel like asking today, or that you think about the next few days, you can email us at info@lupuscanada.org. Be good to put subject line advocacy question. The staff will be able to reach out to me, and we can set up a chat if you want, or if you just want to connect over email, be happy to provide some advice. So with all that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Any questions?
Thomas, thank you for that. I just thought maybe I'll ask a quick question that might be helpful to other folks is, after they've sent that email or made that phone call, what would you say would be appropriate follow-up time?
Good question. It depends on who you have connected with, I think. So if you're reaching out to a public official, you should always feel like you will get a response. You may not like the response, but you should get a response. And if you haven't gotten a response, in a week and a half, it's okay to send a follow-up email to say, hello, following up on this, critical issue, would love to discuss further. Please let me know when we can chat. After, I'd say about 2 emails, start to pick up the phone. Hi, I've sent 2 emails, would love to chat. If you're getting huge resistance, recognize that and perhaps go to the next person. If this person doesn't want to help you, there are always other people, and just say, all right, you were on my list of someone to talk to. You're off my list now. You're dead to me. Goodbye. I joke, of course, but I think what's good to know here with your own self-advocacy initiatives is there is very rarely one person who's standing in your way. If there is someone who won't connect with you, won't engage, you can go around them to other people.
Thank you for answering that, Thomas. We have another question from Robin, who asks, is there any kind of advocacy group that one could join in regards to disability tax credits?
Yes, great question, Robin. Oh, I see Heather has answered. Thank you. So as Heather had answered, Robin's question say in response to Robin, Facebook group search disability tax credit and RDSP, Canadians only. I love this. I think peer support is a good thing. Unfortunately, sometimes when you're having one-on-one exchanges, especially with the government, you may get some information that's not always public, or you may get some information that isn't widely available. The more you can share that information in groups like through this Facebook group, the better. In terms of an advocacy group that you could join regarding disability tax credits, not one comes off the top of my head, but this is an issue that, access to the DDC that Lupus Canada has also been working on during the last election. We asked for the eligibility to be made clearer, or so that people with episodic disabilities could be included. If you have a question, or if you're looking for advice, you're more than able to come to Lupus Canada and have that conversation to see, how we could provide that support to you. But there are other disability groups who are working in this space. And as always, a quick Google search, disability tax credit, peer support, or disability tax credit advocacy group. Perhaps that's another way of figuring that out.
Another thing to add to that, Thomas, you mentioned our Facebook group. We do have the Facebook closed group, which is another good source for folks to ask these sort of questions, because they're talking to other people who may have been through the very similar thing. So it's another great resource for folks to reach out to.
Absolutely. I think that peer support, being able to chat with people who know exactly what you're going through is really critical, and can help you to feel self-empowered even more, to know that you're not alone. All right, I think there is a question in the Q&A.
Yes, we have a couple. So we have from Yadira, I'm so sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly, but they said, would Lupus Canada help you with insurance claims specifically? I've been paying my insurance for years now, but they denied my critical illness because it is an autoimmune system. However, MS qualifies.
That's an unfortunate issue. As I said, our philosophy here is to really try and empower you to move forward with your self-advocacy. So we wouldn't take on, this issue as our own, but we would be more than willing to have a conversation with you to understand the situation, maybe provide some advice on how best to, communicate with your insurance company to get them to understand. If that means, pulling information from the Lupus Canada website to say, this is what I'm going through, this is why I qualify. That's more than acceptable as well too. But I think for this specific instance, without knowing more information, not 100% sure I can answer it correctly. But Yadira, if you want to send an email to info@lupuscanada.org, we can try and find some time to chat, perhaps one-on-one. Yeah.
The next question's from Jordan, who says, being on immunosuppressants, I've been placed on leave from work and I'm living off of government benefits. I've been told that I may not be able to return to a work setting until the end of the year. I'm learning to implement new ways to save and gain money, like stocks and budgeting. Would you guys have any other suggestions or approaches?
Oh, it's an interesting one. It doesn't sound like ideal also, Jordan. I'm sorry to hear that. I think one of the good things about the silver linings of this pandemic is that people have been transitioning to a work from home model. People have been able to, where appropriate, of course, not knowing what line of work you're in, be able to use a laptop and a phone to connect with their colleagues. Perhaps, depending on your situation, and I don't want to generalize or assume anything here, perhaps there are a few approaches that would work, whether that's, trying a phased return to work situation. So not just going back full time if that is your case, but seeing if you could come in a few hours a week and of course be paid for that. Leanne, I'm not too sure if this is something that, as staff, we've encountered as well. If you've perhaps have any suggestions or aware of any supports that would be able to help as well.
Yeah, it's a great question because it's actually going to be something that we're going to be discussing on a future webinar about how to deal with your finances, especially under these circumstances and living with lupus. So we'll be addressing this a little bit more comprehensively within the next few months. So hopefully we're able to address those questions, but we will definitely take this into account. And if you want to contact the office, we'll see if we can answer your questions before that.
Thanks, Leanne. I see Heather's commented saying, I'd like to share that my insurance terminated me after being on it for 5 years. I'm now in a lawsuit. Parts of my day were used on their surveillance against me to say that I'm fine. Oh, MS is a similar illness. We have a whole lot of work to do for lupus. Yeah, I definitely agree. Since I've been involved with Lupus Canada, I've seen, the public awareness work that we've been doing has really, tried to reach as much of society as we can, because lupus is just so not well understood. And I think that's starting to help, but there's a lot more that definitely needs to be done. Yeah. Kathy says, graduated return to work plans need to be specific to the duty to accommodate rules in your specific workplace. That's a great point, Kathy. Thank you for that. And I believe
Heather just, she let Jordan know of like different ways that you could be looking at your budget. So thank you, Heather. I'm sure Jordan appreciates that as well. I'm not sure. Okay, Andrea, I just asked a question. I recently asked my room for patients who are true seasoned lupus veterans who might be able to offer support to patients who continue to face life challenges and have already come these life obstacles. I'm a strong believer in peer support and have mentored a lot. Unfortunately, most of my former mentors have passed.
Thank you for sharing that, Andrea. That's that's very nice to share. As Leanne said, we do have a Facebook group for those who are on social media. It is a good space for peer support. I'm not too sure if there are other ways, of course, that other than through the Facebook group, where you could get some of that peer support, but it's a good place to start.
We also have Thomas from Charlene, so sorry to interrupt you. They ask, do you know if there's a lupus association in every province?
I can jump in on that for you, Thomas.
Great.
There are provincial organizations in most of the provinces in Canada. A lot of them are run by volunteers. So especially during COVID, it's been a little bit more challenging. If there's something specific to a province that you would like and you're having any difficulty contacting them, please contact us and we'll do our best to either answer your questions or direct you to the appropriate person within that province to address your questions. And there are support groups, and I know Lupus Ontario is doing an online support group, and you can find the link on our website, or you can go directly to Lupus Ontario's website to find that. And I know those support groups have been very beneficial, especially as some of the other provinces have been unable to provide peer-to-peer support or face-to-face. So please check out our website for that as well.
So thank you, Thomas, for spending your time with all of us tonight. We have only about 5 minutes left. So I'd just like to remind everyone that you can follow us on our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, for more information on our upcoming webinars. And also this recording will be posted on our website if you'd ever need reference. Just an additional point is a lot of people are asking for peer support. And I would just like to suggest that Lupus Canada has an e-newsletter where we try to allow people to submit their own lupus stories. And we try to provide a community of hope. So if you're ever interested, these stories we find are very helpful for other Canadians living with lupus. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Leanne, to that. I just wanted to put that in there.
That's actually great. And also we're always interested in hearing stories of caregivers that are living with people that are living with lupus, because that's a support group that sometimes always doesn't get heard. So we're always very interested to hear your stories as well.
Ariana
Yes.
and Leanne, it looks like Roxanne has asked, what is our Facebook page? Perhaps what we can do for folks, if we're able to, is send out a post email to people based on, I think we should be able to do it from their Zoom RSVP, maybe with a few of the resources that we've chatted about tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll do that. And our website is lupuscanada.org, and we'll be posting everything about the webinars on that website as well. And if there's anything that has been asked, we will also try and post it there, so you have one place to go to with links to our Facebook and our Twitter and our Instagram and what have you. So the other thing is as we're just finishing up here, we'd also like to invite people to send us topics that may be of interest to you around advocacy. Those can be sent to info@lupuscanada.org. As we're developing and building this program, we really want to address things that are important to you, and so that we can best help everyone out that's living with lupus or a caregiver of someone with lupus.
Just to put there, Heather says that there is a Fibro London support group, and it is active with other people who have other illnesses. So just to let everyone know. I don't believe there are other questions, Thomas. So maybe Leanne, would you like us to conclude now?
Thank you, Ariana. We can definitely wrap it up tonight. And I want to also thank Thomas. Wonderful presentation, extremely informative. I hope everybody's really enjoyed it. We will have everything on our website. It will also be recorded, so you can watch it back. And some of the webinars that will be coming up, as I mentioned, we'll be talking about finances. We'll also be talking about navigating your health within your healthcare team, and also within HR. So HR topics about how to advocate for yourself within your workplace. So those are just some of the topics that will be coming up over the next few months. And we look forward to seeing everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Ariana.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all for joining us tonight.
Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.